Hi, it's Charlie Minato from Halfwheel.com. Today's review is a little bit different than normal. Normally, when we do these accessory reviews, we've used the product. In my case, it's usually multiple months for Humidor-related products. But this time, I'm reviewing a product, the Humi-Care seasoning wipes, that I actually haven't used yet. And that's because it's a relatively unique product and not something that, unless I want to buy a whole bunch of Humidors, I can really test out that well ahead of time. And it's probably a pretty simple product, would be my guess. So it's going to look the same for you, but you're going to actually watch me sort of learn what this product is all about as we do this live. So as the name implies, it is a seasoning wipe. So it's made to help season your humidor, not your food. And seasoning is a process where you introduce moisture into the interior wood of a humidor. So this wood, not this wood. It used to be really, really important because that was the main source of humidification for cigars up until a handful of decades ago. Now we use external humidity elements, so humidifiers like a Boveda or maybe a florist foam, gels, beads, electronic humidification, but it used to be the case that the wood actually was what would keep your cigars to be humid. And it's still important today because if the wood is dry, it has the chance that it might actually suck the moisture out of your cigars. So it's always important that you season a humidor. Now, in terms of seasoning, I imagine that there are 4 common ways that people go about doing this. The most common is that most people don't know how to season a humidor and don't do it. And so they just open their humidor up, they put their cigars in, and whatever happens, happens. Certainly not the best way to go about doing it. And if you are going to season your humidor, my guess is you probably will use something called the sponge or the plate method. So you'll take a small plate, you'll put a brand new sponge on it, you'll dip the sponge in distilled water, maybe you'll use a paper towel, you'll put it on the plate, and then you'll close the lid of the humidor and come back a few days or maybe a few weeks later. And the idea there is that the humidity, the water content that's in either the sponge or the paper towel will slowly evaporate and go into the porous areas of the wood on the inside of your humidor. Another very similar method that I imagine is quite popular is to use the Boveda, the 84% pack. I've certainly done that a handful of times. It's just like a normal Boveda pack. It's just set at a much higher relative humidity. And so you just stick that in, close the lid, and Boveda I think actually recommends 2 weeks. And obviously, depending on the size of the humidor, depends on how many Boveda packs you want. And then the next method, which is actually what this is quite similar to, is to actually dampen down the wood. And the way that most people are taught to do that is to take either paper towel or a cloth and dip it in distilled water, and then to run that along the surface here and to wet it down. I typically don't do this and don't recommend doing it because you have the chance, unlike all the rest of those or the other methods, this is the one where if you put too much moisture in, you could cause damage, and this is really the one where there's the highest likelihood that you are going to have too much moisture involved. But it's time to test out the Humi-Care seasoning wipes. All right, so this is, we're just going to do this live, I guess. So these are the packets. As you can see, they're a bit different looking than your typical condom packaging, but otherwise could be somewhat confused from it. It's got inside of it a wipe, like a large wipe. It says here, there are some instructions here. So it says, seasoning wipes are specially formulated to season or restore any cedar line humidor when combined with other Humi-Care humidification products. The seasoning process creates an ideal environment for long-term storage of handmade cigars. After opening the Humi-Care seasoning wipes, literally wipe the entire inside wood surface of your humidor. For best results, it is recommended that you repeat this process 2 to 3 times in 24-hour intervals. Use once and discard. So I'm guessing that I'm going to have to use multiple wipes for a single seasoning here of this humidor. These are about $1.50 a piece, so I guess you need about $4.50 worth to, or maybe $3 to season the humidor. So I'm going to open it up. If you're wondering what that special formulation is, it is distilled water and propylene glycol, which is the stuff that you spray here. So you can see the wipe here. It's I would say thicker than like your typical wipe that you would use. It's pretty thick. I don't know how well that's going to show up on the camera, but certainly thicker than like a cleaning wipe would be. It's also obviously not that big. It reminds me actually like of the thickness of a lot of the thicker like glass cleaners that you get when you buy a pair of glasses, and it's got plenty of moisture on there. It smells a little bit like propylene glycol, but otherwise not much. So I'm going to try to do this as best I can. So I don't really know what results you are hoping to see here. I will say, now it is picking up a little bit of the wood texture there. If we had to think of like one of the stupidest products to review on this site, this is probably on the list. certainly one where it's like, I don't understand why this exists. Like, why can't you just use a, a damp cloth or a sponge or whatever? But they're sold out of them, so either they've decided to stop making them. Now, Humi-Care is a brand that is part of the Cigars International family. It's slowly started to be sold in other stores because General Cigar Company is carrying it. I will say, before I get back to it, you can sort of tell up here that it's, I guess maybe not, the lights kind of make it, but it's pretty clear that up here there was a lot more moisture, and now that I'm getting down to here, there's not as much moisture even after I flipped it over coming off of the wipe here. So Humi-Care is a brand that was it's, I think created by or made by quality importers, or at least they're the ones that facilitate the manufacturing, and then it's sold. It's a Cigars International brand, so it's starting to show up in stores, and they make all sorts of humidor related products. So I guess I can show you here. This is a humidor that we've had for this specific purpose. We've never seasoned it before, and we have used it to kind of store some loose cigars, actually to store the cigars before we, once I'm putting in bags to send off to Cigars for Warriors. So anytime we have less than 15, we put them in here for the time being. So it's never been seasoned, but it is in Dallas, so it's not like it's bone dry, although it's inside here. Yeah. I guess if you're seasoning at home, you definitely want to get as much of the unfinished wood as possible, and you really kind of just want to pretty much anything. You don't want to put all of the moisture in one area. You want to make sure you get the corners, and then as the product recommends here, they say that you want to use it 2 to 3 times over 24 hours. That makes sense. What I don't entirely understand is why there's propylene glycol in this. Propylene glycol is used for the florist foam humidifiers to actually both restrict the amount of humidity that can come out of it, and also because it's it's an anti-molding solution, at least as far as I understand. I don't know what the benefit is here, but anyway, that's the first bout with it. You can see that it has picked up some loose cigar fragments as well as a bit of wood, because it's not exactly the nicest humidor in the world, and then obviously quite a bit of browning from the wood coming off. There still is plenty of moisture. It's still plenty pliable. I don't, maybe you put this back in the bag. I'm guessing they'll probably just use another one. They're $1.50 a piece. It did an okay job. I'm still, like I said, I'm confused as to why there's propylene glycol in this, but other than that, I originally just thought it was going to be a nice towel with some distilled water on it. And that's more or less what it is, and that's more or less the competition here. I don't know why you need this over any clean rag or towel or paper towel with some distilled water. Certainly buying a gallon of distilled water, which is like $1, would be cheaper than buying a singular one of these wipes. And chances are, if you're watching this, you have a computer, so I'm guessing you probably have access to paper towels, and you probably have access to rags or other towels. That still would be my preferred method if you wanted to wipe it down. I don't think you need a fancy product like this. Certainly from an environmental standpoint, if you are going to buy just a 4-pack of these and have these shipped to you, that is a huge waste of gas and time on a lot of people's parts. It'd be a lot easier and I think you would get basically the same results as if you just used a paper towel. The sponge method, brand new sponge, put it on a plate, dip it in distilled water, has always worked fine. The Boveda packs have worked fine. You can put a bowl of water in here. It's just a matter of how long you want to wait, and most people don't want to wait very often, so that's why they use the wipe down method. But once again, the wipe down method was working just fine before the Humi-Care seasoning wipes came along. So at $1.50, it is one of both the least offensive products, because it works exactly as advertised, and also sort of one of the most offensive products because I don't understand why anyone thought this was necessary. But it would not surprise me, given that they're sold out, if these are popular, because people just kind of don't know any better and don't know that that's what you need to do to season your humidor. But if you're a reader of Half Wheel, you probably know that there are other ways to do this, and more effective ways. And that's what I would recommend going forward. But certainly, I don't think it's any harm if you happen to have these, or if they come with your humidor for whatever reason, you can use them. I don't think it's going to damage it. Still a little confused by the propylene glycol. The one last thing to remember about seasoning your humidor is you want to make sure you're done seasoning the humidor before you put the cigars back in. So if I continue down this process, which I'm going to probably do, of just using 2 more of these over the course of the next 23 and 3/4 hours, I'm not going to put cigars in it probably for about a week, just to let the humidor kind of come to a natural level state, because you run the risk of the water, the moisture on the wood, both entering the cigars, as well as obviously you can see when you get wood wet, it does, wood comes off of it for whatever reason. So definitely don't want to put cigars in here immediately. But if you want to learn more about slightly more interesting humidification products and other cigar accessories, obviously cigar reviews, cigar news, and legislation, you can check out halfwheel.com.